Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and all of Santa's reindeer, greetings and hello, it is I, your favorite obscure social studies teacher, Mr. Palumbo, and this is the Professor Liberty Podcast, the only podcast where history, mystery, and a bit of holiday magic come together for your educational enjoyment. Today, we're diving deep into something a lot of people take for granted. Christmas. You know it. You love it. But how much do you actually know about its origins? From the date of Jesus' birth to the enigmatic Star of Bethlehem, we're going to unpack all the history you didn't even know you needed. So sit back, relax, and maybe grab a cup of hot cocoa. This is going to be one festive history ride. If you'd like to email the show, the email is professorliberty1776@gmail.com. That's professorliberty1776@gmail.com. Send me your thoughts, feelings, ideas, comments, strategies, philosophies, whatever. Send them to professorliberty1776@gmail.com. You can also hit me up on the Facebook Messenger, as many of you like to do. Okay, well, we're in the Christmas season, and I wanted to do a Christmas episode to cap off the year. Personally, I love this holiday, and I love the Christmas season, and it seems that the older I get, the more magical it becomes. Of course, as with most traditional things, the relativists and the atheists and nihilists have tried to destroy any religious connection to Christmas. They claim, as I know many of you have heard, that Christmas is a pagan holiday that the church co-opted. Is that true? Well, I decided to investigate it. Most of us are familiar with the traditional story of Christmas, with the birth of Jesus celebrated on December 25th. But if we dig into the historical and astronomical evidence, we find that Jesus' birth might have occurred in September of 3 BC. So how did we end up with December 25th as the official date? And what does the Star of Bethlehem really mean? Today, we'll unravel this story using historical records, ancient traditions, and scientific data. Let's dive in. Well, let's start with the Roman census. The Gospel of Luke tells us that Joseph and Mary traveled to Bethlehem for a census ordered by Emperor Augustus. And this is a key piece of evidence in figuring out the likely time of year. Scholars like William Ramsey have pointed out that this census likely took place between August and October, a time when people would be more willing to travel and participate. Since the rainy season in Judea starts in March, this rules out a spring birth for Jesus, and it pushes us toward a fall birth around September of 3 BC. Now we can further refine our timeline by considering the priestly service of Zechariah, the father of John the Baptist. According to the Gospel of Luke, Zechariah was serving in the 8th priestly course from May 19th to May 26th in 4 BC. During this time, he encountered an angel who foretold the birth of his son John, and Zechariah was struck mute as a result. If we assume that Elizabeth conceived shortly after this encounter, sometime between May 26th and June 1st, then John the Baptist would have been born around March 10th, 3 BC. Since Jesus was born 6 months after John, we can estimate that Jesus was born around September. So while the exact date of Jesus' birth remains unknown, it seems highly likely that it occurred in the fall, not the winter. But that's not the end of the story. Now let's talk about the famous Star of Bethlehem, a celestial event that has captured imaginations for centuries. In the Gospel of Matthew, we read about the Magi, or wise men, who followed a star to find the newborn king of the Jews. The The star guided them to Bethlehem, where they offered their gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh to Jesus. The Star of Bethlehem has long been debated. Was it a comet, a supernova, or something else entirely? One of the most discussed possibilities is that it was a rare planetary alignment, specifically a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn that took place around 7 BC. In that year, these two planets appeared to come close together, not just once, but multiple times over the course of several months. In the spring, again in the fall, and then once more in early winter. To ancient astrologers like the Magi, events like this weren't just beautiful, they were meaningful. Jupiter was associated with kingship, Saturn with destiny and order. A repeated, striking alignment would have been read as the announcement of a great ruler's birth. So here's the interesting part. And guess which winter month many astronomers point to as the third and final conjunction? You guess it, the month of December. And this actually helps our understanding of the gospel accounts rather than hurting it, because Matthew isn't describing the night Jesus was born. He's describing what happened after. Luke gives us the lead up to the birth, the announcements, the journey to Bethlehem, the manger, the shepherds, and the earliest days of Jesus' life. Matthew, on the other hand, assumes Jesus has already been born and then tells us what followed: the appearance of the star, the journey of the Magi, and their arrival at the place where the child was. So when Matthew talks about a star guiding the Magi, he's not contradicting Luke's account at all. He's simply picking up the story later, after the birth itself, while Luke is focused on how we got there. Rather than two competing timelines, what we have are two perspectives on the same story, told from different angles and at different moments. Luke brings us to the birth. Matthew shows us what that birth set in motion. Early Christian interpreters connected the Star of Bethlehem to prophecies in the Hebrew Scriptures. One key passage is Numbers 24:17, which says, "A star shall come out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel." This cryptic oracle from Balaam was understood by early Christians as predicting the coming of the Messiah. Another important verse is Micah 5:2, which foretells the birth of a ruler in Bethlehem. Although it doesn't mention a star, Matthew and later writers linked it to the story of the Magi, presenting the star as a divine sign that announced the arrival of the promised king. Now let's shift gears and look at an ancient tradition that contributed to the dating of Jesus' birth. Sextus Julius Africanus, a Roman scholar and Christian, believed that Jesus' conception took place on March 25th. According to Africanus, this was the date of the Annunciation, the day the angel Gabriel appeared to Mary to announce that she would conceive the Son of God. Based on this belief, Africanus calculated that Jesus was born 9 months later on December 25th. This idea became widely accepted in the early Christian church, and by the 4th century, December 25th was officially designated as the day to celebrate the birth of Jesus. Though modern scholars suggest that Jesus was likely born in the fall, Africanus's calculation of March 25th and the 9-month pregnancy to December 25th remains a significant historical influence on the holiday as we know it today. So, where does this leave us? We've explored a variety of evidence and theories about the birth of Jesus, from astronomical events like the Star of Bethlehem to the historical timing of the Roman census, and the priestly courses. We've also examined how early Christians, like Sextus Julius Africanus, believed Jesus was conceived on March 25th and why the December 25th date became the tradition. While we may never be able to pinpoint the exact date of Jesus' birth, what's clear is that December 25th wasn't just picked out of thin air. The historical, astronomical, and biblical evidence suggests that it could have been a symbolic choice tied to earlier traditions, and it definitely has a strong theological significance. As for the Star of Bethlehem, though we can't fully explain it scientifically, the idea that it was a planetary alignment or another natural event still makes sense as a sign from the heavens, one that captivated the Magi and drew them to Jesus. Look, folks, if there's one thing I hope you take away, it's this. December 25th isn't some random date that the church picked to match up with pagan festivals like Sol Invictus. In fact, there's plenty of evidence suggesting that Jesus' birth was recognized on December 25th early on, and that it was rooted in both theological reasons and long-standing Christian traditions, and that it was the pagans that moved their holiday dates to compete with the ascending Christians. Let's break that down. First off, we've got Saint Hippolytus of Rome, one of the earliest Christian scholars who in 204 AD specifically mentioned that Jesus' birth occurred on December 25th, 8 days before the calends of January, which was the first day of the month in the Roman calendar. This is the earliest known record of Jesus being born on December 25th, 70 years before the Roman Emperor Aurelian even made Sol Invictus a big thing. So the idea that Christians just co-opted December 25th because of a pagan holiday doesn't really hold up when you look at the timeline. Then there's Sextus Africanus, as we already mentioned, who calculated that Jesus' conception was on March 25th, even though modern scholars lean toward a fall birth. Africanus's theological reasoning about the Annunciation in the spring makes sense in the context of early Christian thought. So the tradition of celebrating Jesus' birth in late December didn't happen out of nowhere. So you've got Hippolytus in 204 AD and Africanus, who lived from the mid-100s AD to the early 200s, two ancient sources mentioning the 25th as the date of Jesus' birth. Does that prove that it's indeed true? No, but it gives us some historical confidence. When we put the historical, astronomical, and theological evidence together, December 25th gains a certain resonance. While historical clues and astronomical data suggest a birth in the fall, the proximity of the seasons, the timing of celestial events like the triple conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, and the early Christian choice of December 25th all converge to give us confidence that this date was embraced with both symbolic and practical significance. It wasn't chosen at random. It marks a moment when the light of the world was celebrated as entering a darkened world, coming precisely when the world is at its darkest, just after the winter solstice, symbolizing the return of light. Now, I get it. For some people, it's tempting to say, oh, it's just a myth, or it's all made up. And hey, I'm not trying to say we can prove Jesus was born on December 25th beyond a shadow of a doubt. But the historical evidence, the early church writings, and the signs from the heavens we've discussed today should give you confidence that December 25th is, at the very least, a well-founded and meaningful date. It's a date with roots in early Christian tradition, biblical prophecy, and the spiritual symbolism of the light of Christ breaking into the world. So when you celebrate Christmas, whether you're all about the presents, the food, or the nativity scenes, you can be confident that December 25th wasn't just randomly chosen to match a pagan holiday. It's a date that's been tied to the birth of Jesus for centuries. Sure, we may not know the exact date of Jesus' birth, but as Christians, we celebrate this date as the moment when God came into the world as a human to bring light into darkness. Thank you for sticking with me through this deep dive into the history of Christmas. I hope this has given you a new perspective on December 25th and why it's so much more than just a winter holiday. As we wrap up 2025, I just want to say thank you to all the faithful followers of this podcast. I'm so humbled that the tens and tens of you stick around to hear my ramblings. I want to wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Here at Professor Liberty, we seek to educate, inspire, and restore. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, share with your friends, your family, and that blue-haired communist cousin. They, them need Christmas cheer too. I hope you come back for more fascinating history, economics, civics, and whatever else manifests in the deep crevasses of my fertile mind. Don't forget to check out ProfessorLiberty.com. Follow us on Facebook and X. Until next time, Merry Christmas, whenever that may be. Go throughout the land and proclaim liberty. That rhymed.